There's absolutely no reason whatsoever why you guys as tradespeople should not be getting paid on site and on time for the work that you do. Sure, sometimes it's contractually based and money gets distributed over a period of time, but fundamentally guys, you should be getting paid for the work that you do once it's been done. In this podcast episode, we are going to be talking just about that. We're going to be talking about upfront pricing. It's not magic, it's science and it's consistency. There's ways that you can set this up in your company so that you never have to worry about chasing bills again, so that you get paid for the work that you do, and so that you reduce these huge overheads in chasing debts and expenses that are just completely unnecessary, while at the same time reducing a phenomenal amount of stress, personal stress, business stress, financial stress. Guys, you're going to love this podcast. I know it. I look forward to hearing your comments. So let's dive right in. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Marcel, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Thank you for having me here, Matt.
Absolutely, mate. So we're talking today about, this is the first episode in the Getting Paid On Site and On Time series. You're from a company called Flat Rate Now, and I suppose you guys do a lot of work in the technology front for upfront pricing, flat rate pricing, whatever guys want to call it. There are a few different terms for it, aren't there, around the world? Different people call it different things, I've noticed.
Yeah, there really is. You got the upfront pricing. It's providing a quote before you commence the job. Look, there's many ways you can say. At the end of the day, it's just all about being consistent with your client. Consistent pricing is another name that they call it, but there's not very many industries out there that aren't doing that, where you are providing a price to your client before they're purchasing your service.
Yeah, I find it's a bit of obviously there's a lot of conversations in the community around guys chasing bills and all this kind of stuff. I don't know why, for some reason, I feel like in the trades, people think it's okay to not get paid while they're on site, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's not like you'd walk into Woolworths and fill your bag with shopping and, say, "I'll send me the invoice." Anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Look, I'm only 26 years old, so this is stories that I've been told by the older tradesmen where they used to walk into the properties when they were 16, 17 years old, and this is 40, 50 years ago. And they had a side entrance for the tradesmen to walk into the property. And then usually if it was a wealthier family, the husband wouldn't be there, or the man of the house wouldn't be there. So they would do the work, leave the invoice on the table, and the woman of the house would say, husband's not here to check the invoice. So when he gets back from holidays, I'll get him to review your invoice, and then we'll pay you when we pay you. And that could be 4 or 6 weeks. Now, that's 40, 50 years ago. We're in 2019. There is no need for that nowadays.
Mate, you know what, though, to be fair, I was, even when I did my apprenticeship, and so that was, we started that in 2000, it would have been 99, I guess, when I started. But that was common practice back then, even, wasn't that long ago. Technology wasn't around back then. People didn't know how to get paid on site. It just didn't exist. So it was all carbon copy invoice book, leave it behind. And it was an absolute ball ache. There was constantly there was a person in the office chasing bills. It was just a full-time job, which is insane. It's just such a waste of resource. And there's people out there that are still doing it. And I'm hoping with this series that we can kind of sway a lot of them to different, a bit of a different paradigm in their thinking, so they can go down that getting paid on site mentality. Obviously, some verticals are a little bit easier to do this with than others. I know, there'd be a lot of builders and stuff listening to thinking, well, we do project work, and you're not going to get paid for a project up front before you do it, which of course that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
I think, however, through conversations I've had with clients and with people that do project-based work, there is still ways that you can get payment up front in the terms of getting paid for quotes, bids, proposals. Might be call fees, or it could be pricing for quoting, being paid for estimates, or whatever it might look like. So just think when you're listening or watching this, guys, just trying to think how this might apply to you, because at the end of the day, what we find is, getting paid up front, or getting paid in some way, having your client make some sort of financial investment to you will qualify them further than someone that hasn't. So we're trying to avoid, I suppose, to a degree, tire kickers. I suppose what we're going to be talking about today, Marcel, or in this series anyway, is probably a little bit more geared towards your residential maintenance sort of service. Would that be right?
Exactly right. Yeah. So it's essentially the COD work, the cash on delivery. But even tying it back into the builders, a lot of them will still go through, and they will, as they go through that process, they identify the price of what the job's going to be. They'll present to the client, so the client will know roughly what the estimate is for the job. And then as they're going through, they'll go stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. And this is how the large builders are doing it on, One Central Park. When I worked on that construction site, there was a specific phase had to be complete, and once that was completed, then the money got released for that. So it was $1 million job, and there was 10 phases and $100,000 each. That's still, kind of like cash on delivery in another form. But it's, if you're allowing your client to say, here's the price that I'm going to pay you at the very end of the job, and that's a 9-month, 10-month, 12-month job, then that's not going to be ideal for any business. There is no cash flow in that sense. You're chasing your own tail while doing work. So building in what could be called a payment plan for a larger project like that would still allow them to go through and, receive funds as they're doing the job. And it's just saying, drawing the line in the sand, I've done this part, it's going to cost X, and you can still essentially do a bit of a cash on delivery. So it's, although, the private maintenance work is and should be cash on delivery, you still can implement a similar idea within the project side as well.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I know it's a very hot topic of conversation, especially for guys that are spending so much time creating these detailed proposals and estimates and, all this kind of stuff for clients. And why shouldn't they be getting paid for that?
100%.
I've got builder clients that will sometimes on a big job, they'll spend a week putting an estimate together, it's insane to presume that somebody should be doing that for nothing.
Well, that's exactly right. I don't understand why. There's something that I've never been able to quite understand and just get through my thick head is why tradesmen feel that they should be doing that, whether it's for free or for a half the cost. I understand the consumers on the other at the end of the one putting the pressure and say, no, I want it for free, I want it for free, I want it for free. But you don't walk into a doctor's surgery and, not pay to sit down for that consultation. You got a 15-minute window and you're forking out X amount for it, and everyone's fine with that, So whether it's an internal personal thing or if it's just, history's come together to push it down that path, I'm not too sure. But evolution shows that we should be changing that. We need to be pushing it as a team together and as an industry to say, no, we need to start to charge for our time.
Well, that's the bottom line. It's the industry that dictates it. So, when you've got, 10 people that are not charging for a quote and you are, then the common objection is, well, why does yours cost money when theirs is free? So what we're trying to address, I suppose, is more on a macro level here, educating all the listeners and viewers out there that, if everyone does this the right way, then everyone benefits, and it does reduces some of those arguments, and it makes those, makes the whole industry move forward, and it puts money in your pocket, in everyone's pocket.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And most tradesmen that run their own businesses, they're licensed. And when you're licensed, you've had to go through an education process, and you go through the education process so you can turn around and say, I know enough about this to be able to charge you for my time and my knowledge. So those that are out there running around now doing it for free, I understand that they might have a different sales methodology, like a loss leader to get in there. But then by doing that, it does also hurt the rest of the industry because others don't understand that that's what they're doing, and the customer only sees that first that first barrier and doesn't realise that they would then be on charge for something else later on. So you're right, it does rely on, what others are doing and if everyone understands what they're trying to do. But if there's at least a base understanding that everyone should be doing X, then it helps to raise that bar of the industry.
So I'm hoping that within this series we cover off on as well the reality of being able to implement tools into a business that can reduce friction from the perspective of, like, first of all, understanding what your actual costs are and building price around a figure that encompasses all of your expenses, because I know that that's a big problem with guys. And very often, I've been through the exercise myself back when I was plumbing, and I looked at all of my expenses, and I think to break even, I had to be charging about $250 an hour when I was plumbing, and I was like, what, $250 an hour? It's insane. But when you look at, if you do it right, that's, you need to be charging the right money. Otherwise, you just literally, you're not, people, you hear all this garbage in the news, all this clickbait, bullshit about, plumbers make $90 an hour. And, if you're charging $90 an hour as a residential maintenance plumber, you're dead before you even get going.
That's exactly right. I actually heard last week that if you went to the Master Plumbers Association and asked them what it is at a bare minimum that a business owner it'll cost a business owner, to hire a fully qualified tradesman, and don't quote me on the exact number, but because it was a fleeting comment in the conversation, but I believe it was about $87. So if you're charging $90 an hour and you've got a tradesman on hand, what are you walking about, $3 per hour? Like, come on, no one can sustain that.
No, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, ideally, we're going to certainly try and remove the wool from in front of people's eyes in this series, because I think once people actually understand what their true costs are, they will start charging right. And in the first episode here, we were talking about upfront pricing not being magic; it's science and consistency. So I guess we're going to dive a lot into those sort of figures and stuff within that episode. The second episode, we're going to be talking about using technology that removes friction and improves efficiency. And then in the final episode, we're going to be talking about using data to create an amazing customer experience. All of these things are very close to home for me on a different level, I suppose. I mean, we look at this from getting paid on site point of view, but when this could be well and truly applicable to pretty much every, most areas of business, whether that's, like accounting, it could be marketing, whatever, using technology, using data, it's all very relevant across the board. So I like that in this series, we're going to be talking about, something that we're very big on at the Site Shed, but something that is being applied specifically to helping guys get paid on site on time.
That's exactly right. It's technology. It's been used since before the 1800s. Really, I believe the first time it was implemented was in the late 1700s when they first got power. So it's been around for a long, long, long time. We're not, trying to invent something that's not there and change a process that's not already there. It's just, trying to, as you said, remove the wool from in front of the eyes to say, there's a better way to do things. You don't need to be working 90 hours a week and you're spending most of that time on paperwork and things like that and trying to do the mathematics to figure it all out and using calculators. There's software specifically built there for you that can do that for you in a click of a button. It really, all it takes is a question of, who do I reach out to find that out? And the moment you understand who you can reach out to and start having a conversation with people, business starts to become a lot more fun and a lot less of a grind. And
I would say as well, guys, do your own research on this stuff. I mean, we're here to give you information about, these, provide you with information, but it's up to you to go and research it. And all you need to do is go and speak to people that are doing it to see that it works. I mean, you speak to any successful business out there and you'll probably find that they're all pretty much implementing at some level an upfront pricing or a flat rate pricing sort of model into their residential maintenance business. So it can be done. Yes, it's different. And yes, it's not what you're used to, sure, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to work. And that whole mindset around, well, I've been doing it this way and it works fine. it's complete horseshit, because I know when I was working in the plumbing business, when I did my apprenticeship, the carbon copy invoice book was working fine until I went and worked for another company, and I realized they were using iPads and tablets, and I was like, what the hell? Like, sure, like a horse works fine as well, but we still drive cars. So, it's all about getting exposure to alternative ideas, So
it's good that you say that, because we've brought on a number of plumbing companies over the last couple of months that literally were still using the carbon copy paper for free. You write it, you tear this one off, and you take this one back to the office, and you archive that. And these were younger guys, like 30, 31, 32, and that's how they were taught during their apprenticeship.
Exactly.
This is how you should do it. And they said, look, Marcel, we've never actually invested the time in just figuring out new processes, because, it wasn't broken, so why fix it? But then it got to a point where this one specific client said, he was missing the growth of his children, because he'd get home after, 12, 13-hour days, then spending all that time in the afternoon converting the invoice paper, spitting it all out, looking through it all, and just doing it all manually. And then he would then have to either put it in his shoebox or actually upload it into his accounting software. So 3 to 4 hours every afternoon doing that when you're getting home at 5, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You're missing dinner, you're missing soccer practice with your kids. There's a lot of other fun things you could be doing with that time. And it's really unfortunate that there are, that still happens. But hey, we're all human, we're all learning. So it's as long as in these episodes we can show people, look, you're not the only one, and everyone else does feel this pain. It's just if you can kick the can to the corner and walk to it and make that change, then that's going to help you in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, and this was certainly my experience, when you're going through your apprenticeship, you learn the ways that, the company you work for, the way they operate. So they invoice a certain way, that's the way and you don't know any different until you go and see other people do things differently. And so the whole purpose of this is to show people different ways of doing things, or talk about different ways of doing things anyway, so they can go, oh, okay, well, maybe there is a better way to be doing this thing, whatever that might be. And so, I mean, I know one of the other things as well is just like the massive reduction on friction. And I know we're going to be talking about that in the second episode when we're talking about how to, the biggest overhead in the business is labor typically. And, if you can reduce some of that, which is, like you said, either you're the one doing it at night from 5 o'clock when you get home through to 11 o'clock at night, that's still labor time, and sure, you're sacrificing all this lifestyle and time with your family and friends and whatever, or hobbies, keeping fit, looking after yourself. There's technology that can alleviate all of that time, and you can get it done for you pretty much on the spot. And it's an absolute revelation once you implement it correctly. It's just transforming. So
it truly is, and you can see the smiles on the faces of the gents and the ladies who they get that moment, they go sting in their eyes, and you go, it makes sense. But it is a bit of it can be, change is hard. Change is uncomfortable. It's not, it's not like it's going to happen overnight. You got to break down your own mental barriers and just work through it. But just seeing that result at the end allows you to understand this is a lot better. I do now have 3 hours of an afternoon that I never had before.
Yeah. And I think as well from a stress level point of view, if you're constantly chasing money, like it's such a tedious and draining task to be always chasing debt, whereas if you can eliminate that completely by charging, upfront and on site, like it's a massive headache. Like that alone is a life-changing transformation.
Yeah. Well, a business will only succeed if you've got consistent cash flow. And if you're continually stopping, starting, you can't get that momentum. And once that momentum stops, it's very hard to get it going again. But once it actually moves and becomes perpetual and it keeps on going, you can tell when a business owner has that momentum happening, because it just seems like the world is their oyster. And whereas it could have just been 3 days ago, they were down the dumps, sitting there for 3 hours, chasing up everyone for money. And then, it can be as quick as, a week. It starts to pick up and all the money starts to come through. All their plans that they thought about doing and wanting to roll out now become achievable. They can actually take those steps in the right direction to hire the first tradesman, build the website that they want, get digital marketing, whatever it might be, purely because they've actually got that cash flow that's coming through.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess as well, we're going to talk about how all of those things that you just said then, they all tie into the cost of your jobs. So when you're talking about upfront pricing, you're including all of those overheads within the price. So you can afford things like a new truck or a new website or Google AdWords or SEO or whatever it is. Like, it's all built into the cost of your product, and that's really important that people understand.
That's exactly right. And we're not saying you need to become an accountant. You need to become a profit loss man. You need to become an Excel whiz. It's about leveraging those around you as well. So everyone has to use an accounting software, whether they do it themselves or use an accountant. It's by law. If you want to get your tax back at the end of the year, if you don't want to be hit with a fine, you have to use some form of system to present that information to the government. Within those systems, it tracks your costs, tracks your expenses, it tracks your overhead. It actually has all of that information in there for you. And if you don't know that now, and you're still thinking today, it's been a month and a half, 2 months since the new financial year started. I don't know my expenses. I don't know my overheads. Bring your accountant up and say, hey, can you just give me a quick profit and loss statement? Let me just break it down for me quickly so I can understand what my costs were before in the last financial year. And then that's a line in the sand. You're going to go, essentially, you're probably going to do the same. If you're just going to be doing the same thing day by day, at least you'll understand what your costs were before. And the one thing that you can change after listening to us go through it all is, all right, I now understand that my costs are actually $110 an hour, and I want a 20% margin, and I've got to be charging $132 or whatever that is. Mm-hmm. At least then we know that you've taken away something really key and really, really important to the business. And now you'll then be charging. Yes, it might be a bit higher than what you're used to, but it means that you're now covering your costs of your business and you're getting a little bit extra profit that will allow you to go in and do those business ventures that you've always dreamed of doing.
And so I found, and we're well and truly into the first episode now, folks, as well, which is upfront pricing isn't magic, it's science and consistency. So in my experience as well, there's anything that is of any value, in my experience, will get rejection of some, or resistance, I should say. Maybe not rejection, maybe rejection, but certainly resistance. And so a lot of the resistance comes from people doing things that are different, as we've already discussed. And a lot of the objections that I've heard people come back to with this specific topic is fabricated. It's stuff that they think would be an objection. It's, well, my client won't pay for that, or my client wouldn't pay for that, or I couldn't possibly charge that much. But they don't actually know. They've never actually tested it. So it's very much a mindset problem in a lot of cases. So, I challenge the status quo there, and I sort of say, well, I regularly say this: you don't know unless you try something. But you also got to have, I think, clarity. And I don't know if this comes into part of your program, Marcel, but like understanding who the customer avatar is, and really, like, when you're talking about science and consistency, do you consistently want to be working for people that you're always going to have price battles with, or would you rather target people that are going to consistently be okay with your pricing and consistently be okay with paying up front and consistently understand that you as a business owner have to run your business like a business, not like you're doing favors for mates?
Yeah. And it's a really good point. Personas are a big point when it comes to business. I've heard of many different consultants in the industry that go through, and some of them will say you've got to pick your A's, your B's, your C's, your D's, and you've got to push them down into those specific verticals. You want to be looking at your historical clients, and the ones that have paid up front, ones that haven't given you much pain. They've been very kind, very lovely. Generally, they're going to be the very small percentage of clients that are out there. But by utilizing, your historical data and information, which we'll talk about in episode 3, that will allow you to then build those personas and understand what regions you're working within, and what postcodes are better for you. It may also not even just be the persona of the people. It could also be yourself or your employees. So you might have 3 employees, so yourself and 2 others. You're really, really good as a business owner of just talking to clients. But as a business owner, you generally want to get out there and communicate. And you don't seem to have a problem with selling your prices, because those prices are what needs to be sold as. But your 2 other employees may not. They're not quite as confident. They're not confident because they don't understand, 1, why they're charging that rate, and 2, they're not confident because, they may not like doing a block drains. They may prefer to do hot water systems. So you can build the personas up in silo and vertical all of the clients. But at the end of the day, that's just the first sheet. And then you've also got the ones that come up behind, and is the person you're sending out to the job the right one for that job? And that will always help to alleviate the rejections. Well, not alleviate, sorry, you never will. As you said, you can't alleviate rejections. There's no way in the world you can. It will just help to soften the type of rejection and how severe it's going to be, whether it's just going to be a flat out, nah, get out the door, or, you know, can you offer me a 2.5% discount, or, you know, do I really need this one, or what's this one for? Because questions are a rejection. They are a form of a rejection. If they're questioning your quotation and you're not comfortable enough to explain to the client what the price is, what it is, then that's fine. But education is a big, big thing. That's why universities and colleges can charge whatever they want for courses, and they're still held with such high regard. Because when you're educating someone, they feel empowered. So you can go through the process of building the personas, being the right person out there. But then if you get across that barrier of getting the rejection, you turn around and start to educate the client to say, you know, the reason why I've included the servicing of the tap in this quotation is because I just wanted to show you that if I service the tap, it's going to cost you $350. Humanly calling a number out of the sky, $350 to service that. But to supply and install a brand new tap for you is going to cost you $415. Then you can educate the client and say, if you still want your old look, you know, you've had this tap for 15 years, no worry, I can service them for you and go through, explain what you're going to do in the service. Or you then turn around and say, or alternatively, if you want to pay the extra $70 and you're not really in love with the taps, I can give you a whole brand new tap set, and that's just going to cost you an extra $70. So there's ways that you're going to work around the rejections, allow you to get that across the line. But it does end up, I find that it's the education part that helps with the sale more so than anything.
And I found as well, you know, when we were back when I was plumbing, when we were using the flat rate sort of model, and it was as much as when we weren't flat rating, we'd get a lot of resistance because there was it did seem like you're pulling a number out of your hat, and it was like, okay, well, this is going to cost this much. And people say, well, how do you get to that figure? Whereas I found when we're using flat rate or upfront pricing, we're pricing out of a price book, it was black and white. It was, well, this is how much a tap is. This is how much a block drain is. This is how much this is. This is how much, and so it kind of reduced a lot of friction, and it reduced a lot of that resistance with the client, because they were like, oh, okay, well, it's in the book. That must be what it costs.
Yeah, and if you asked anyone today, where did you buy your clothes from? Where did you get your meal from? They'll always say, I hopped online and the price was there and I bought it. I went to McDonald's and the price was on the wall and I bought it. They're not having to think. What I find, the feeling that I get from the tradesmen is that when they go to the van and they're writing up the quote by hand, they're having to think, how many hours of labour? What am I going to be charging for in materials? Got to think about the job. So they've got to break it all down. And it just seems like the customers are they're so, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? They're being, not brainwashed, not the right word, but everything that they see day in, day out is through an application. They see it on a screen. All the pricing comes in front of them that they don't have to think. But if they know that you've had to go away to do the mathematics, then they feel that, oh, it's itemized to that level of degree where it's completely broken down, and they can start to haggle you with it and say, well, because I know that you went in there to do that, how did you come up with that figure?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's not an answer for an employee to give to a client. Oh, you know, we're charging this amount per hour because overheads and costs and this and that. Oh, and we get the material from Reese at this price, so we mark it up. That's the level of detail the client's going to be hassling for when they feel that they can get in there and really, really fight you for the price. But presenting it to them in front of them off an iPad, it stops that chance for them to think, because they just go, I need this done. This is the price. Should I do it? So it's like a quick succession.
Yeah. I think as well, like when we're talking about from a team perspective, I mean, you know, we're talking about here, like making it more of a science and making it more consistent. And I feel, in my experience, certainly when you've got, like we talk a lot about processes and, you know, operating procedures and that kind of stuff. And effectively, I feel like a flat rate model is a giant operating procedure. It's a way that you can train your entire organization how to deliver a product or a service, or even have a conversation around pricing exactly the same way. This is the iPad, this is the book, whatever you're using, this is the cost. Like you basically, everyone's doing the same thing. So when we're talking about trying to train your team to deliver a product or a service, or have a conversation the way that you want them to have it, there's really no better way to do that than to have it right there in front of them. And we found that, I found, especially before we had that model in the business all those years ago, it was the sales technicians or the tradesmen, they would kind of do the selling the way they wanted to sell it. And, if they didn't like the idea of sales, or they didn't understand the importance of, adding products or trying to upsell certain things when they get to a site, there's nothing you could really do about that. But then as soon as we implemented the consistency across the board with, the flat rate and upfront pricing model, we found that the numbers became a lot more consistent with the sales techs, and everyone was kind of doing a lot more of the same thing that was what we all wanted them to do in the first place.
Yeah, I find it's the stress that comes into having to think about pricing. If you're having to think about pricing, if this is any salesman really, if you walk into do a sale and you have to think about doing the maths in your mind about this, adding this, that throws another level of difficulty into the equation that you don't really need. And as you said, having it on a book or on the iPad in front of you, you're not having to think about how that price came to. Really, because all you have to think about is what you need to do on that job. And as a plumber, as a sparky, as a HVAC, as a builder, whatever it is, you've been educated on how to do that install, how to do that service, how to do that replacement. And through talking about what you get passion. The passion comes out. Clients can see that, and they love it. They understand it. They feel they get brought into what you're trying to say. Although it still is a sales pitch to the client about the price, about the job you're going to do, because it's there, the client's not having to think about too much about the price, and allows you to go, here's your problem, this is the solution, this is what it's going to cost you to do it. By doing it like that, it brings them back into the picture. The client's standing there, they can see it, they can understand it, and then that allows that consistency to come across. So whether it's me or you or Mr. Joe down the road, you can give them the price book. And you say, if you're working for me now, this is the price of what it's going to be. Because installing a hot water system is installing a hot water system, whether it's you or I that do it. So the variant will be the price. But the way that you deliver the message to the client is still about telling them what's going on in that job and how this is going to be the solution for them.
I think as well, one of the things I do like about the upfront pricing model is it gives the customer choice. Whereas back in the day, we would go to a client and we'd say, well, okay, cool, you've got leaking taps, this is what it's going to cost to fix it. Whereas with the upfront pricing model, you can say, well, yeah, you've got leaking taps, and here are a series of options that you can choose for yourself. And so it kind of relates to the customer on whatever level they're at. So I feel like they're not forced into, the sale that you're putting forward. I mean, you can make a recommendation, of course, but at the end of the day, it's up to them.
Buyer's remorse is a big, big thing, massive across any industry. When a customer, it's just simple. When a customer pays for a service that they felt that didn't have the value of what it was costing, then buyer's remorse kicks in, and that's the worst position you can be in as a business owner, because then you've just got a very negative human to deal with, who just literally either wants to see you burn, get compensated, or for some reason do justice against nothing. And what I found is with the time and material approaches, you'll get in there, you'll start the watch, and then you'll usually go through and figure out the different things that you should be doing to try to fix the problem, or you'll go through for the quickest and fastest method. Okay, you've got a leaking tap. I'm not going to bother going through and checking the pressure on the line. I'm not going to bother going through and checking or inspecting the other areas, because you don't want to have that argument at the end of it about the price, because you just want to be paid. So you'll see leaking tap, quickly change, adjust it, look at it, okay, bang, half an hour done, here, please pay me. If that's not what the customer wanted, then even though you fixed the problem, they may have actually wanted to have a brand new tap installed, but they were never given the chance to do that. Yeah. And as you just mentioned, Matt, by doing it up front with the customer and giving them 3 options, here's your repair, here's your replace, and here's your minimum viable option. This is what we really Like, if you don't take any of these, what I can do, which will just get you by maybe for another month or two, and this is going to happen again, I can do that. At least then if the customer chooses that, they've understood that this may come back to bite them in the ass. But if they choose to go replace or repair, it's their own decision. They're the ones that are making that they're the ones that are choosing that option. So that buyer's remorse doesn't necessarily come into effect as much as it could with the time material. Don't get me wrong, still does happen. You're not going to be able to get away from people, but you're right. By giving them that option up front, it not only alleviates the pain of collecting payment later on, but they're on side. They're the ones that chose that tab. They're the ones that chose that option. You didn't force it on them. You didn't tell them to do that. It was their own decision.
So we'll dive a little bit more into the technology side of things in the next episode when we're talking about this, how you can create different pricing options, and we might even tie in, I suppose, things like different areas that the technology can replace. We talk a lot about like organizational structure and staffing and all this kind of stuff in the site shed. And so I'm interested to see, from a technology point of view, when we can tie it back to an org chart or an organizational structure, what parts of the org chart it can replace. So, I mean, for example, accounts receivable, will it take a load off, the accounts receivable lady who's in there trying to constantly be chasing bills and debts and that kind of stuff. But I think so far it's pretty good. So, in terms of this specific episode within this series, we've covered off on the fact that, firstly, being that upfront pricing isn't magic, it's science and consistency. We talked about making sure that you understand what your overheads are, what your expenses are. So that comes into the science side of things. Material is going to cost a certain amount. That your labor is going to cost you this much. You have things like vehicle expenses, you have insurances, you have location expenses, you have electricity, you have internet, you have all these kind of things, mobile phones, so on and so forth.
Can I also just add into that as well? When it comes to breaking down, so it's not magic, it's science and consistency. The reason why I like to say it's to do with factual science is because if what I generally do when I'm speaking with a new tradesman who's interested in coming across to upfront pricing from either a time material approach or a half-half kind of do it, kind of don't do it, not too sure, is I ask this one very simple question. When you're installing an 80-litre hot water unit, so just a regular 80-litre, you arrive on site. The moment you start so you walk in, knock on the door, client invites you in, you start to watch. So you go through your diagnosis process, you inspect the hot water system, identify what's going on. You then turn around to your client, have a chat with them and say, okay, this is what's happening. I believe we should replace it because it's old. It's a 30-year-old hot water system and, we can't fix it. You then, have a bit more conversation, educate them a bit more. They then say, yep, we want to go ahead. You then, decommission, drain it, disconnect everything, pull it out, put in the new hot water unit, connect it all up, turn it back on, put the old hot water unit on the van, finish up, clean up the area, clean up the site, just make sure it's all ready to go. And then you then go back to the car, write your invoice, give it to the client, collect payment, get back to the office, dispose of the old hot water unit, and you get a potential for a callback. How long, on average, would you allocate in doing that specific task? And without fail, I would normally get the answers will be between 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours. And it puts a smile on the face because when we looked at the data, when we reviewed 15 years of job diaries, specifically itemizing the verticals of the hot water units and looked at the 80 litres, it came to 3.5 hours.
Right.
So it's bang on. So that's the science behind the upfront pricing. It's not about someone who's pulling a figure out of their arse and going, bang, it's going to cost you $7,000.
Yeah.
It's actually going in and saying, okay, we know that from the moment we walk through that front door to when we actually go, tick, this job is complete, that on average it's 3.5 hours. Some jobs will take 7, some jobs will take 2. But the laws of average dictate that as long as you're charging on the average, you're going to end up in front depending on where the needle goes. Mm-hmm. So once they start to understand that's what we're trying to do, and that's all that really is, then it makes sense. Okay, so when I go in, it's not about just the labor on the job; it's everything else that encompasses within that. that's my allocated time. But I also then turn around and say, well, if McDonald's can monitor, track, and build data around how long that pickle took to grow to get onto the truck, to get into the McDonald's, get cut, put on the burger and into your mouth, why can't you as a tradesman do that for your business? McDonald's knows it's 2 cents, 3 cents, whatever it is per pickle, and they know that's how much they have to charge. That then all comes together and bundles up within your hamburger.
Yeah.
So by taking, it's not very different. The delivery, kind of, maybe the content, yeah, but the actual idea is no different to in any industry.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right. Well, look, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. We're going to come back for part 2 of the Getting Paid on Site and on Time series. And episode 2 is going to be talking more about technology. So how the technology can remove friction and improve the efficiency within your workflows and within your organization. I am speaking with Marcel Donnelly from Flat Rate Now. Marcel, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt.
And I look forward to jumping into part 2 with you shortly. Listeners, if you have any further questions about anything to do with this episode, by all means, you can post your questions wherever you see this come through across social media or in the comments. Likewise, Marcel's in the Facebook group. So if you want to jump in there, you can certainly ask questions within that group as well. Marcel, let's wrap this one up. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about part 2 in the following episode.
Excellent. Thanks, mate.
Ciao. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.